The letter sat heavy in my hands. 6 years of silence about to be broken with one email attachment. My friend Sarah's divorce mediator would be reading it aloud in exactly 20 minutes, and I imagined her face crumbling as my words stripped away the perfect life she'd constructed from the ashes of mine. The same mediator who'd helped my ex-husband divide our assets was about to deliver my revenge, served ice cold. 6 years ago, I was standing in a vintage lace dress at the Lakeside Gardens in Portland, 3 hours before my wedding, when my phone buzzed with a video. Sarah, my maid of honor, locked in the coat check room with James, the man I was supposed to marry that evening. "I've been sleeping with him for months," she whispered in the caption. "He says he's only marrying you for your family connections." I disappeared that day. No explanations, no goodbyes. I let everyone believe whatever they wanted. And while Sarah moved into my house, wore my engagement ring resized, and built the life that was supposed to be mine, I was documenting everything, building a case file that would destroy them both when the time was right. That time was now. I grew up in Connecticut, where appearances meant everything. My mother, Elizabeth Preston Caldwell, served on every board, charity, and committee in our affluent suburb of Greenwich. My father quietly built his hedge fund empire while she crafted our family's social standing with the precision of a military campaign. Our colonial revival home hosted the right dinner parties, and my two sisters and I attended the right schools, dated the right boys, and were expected to make the right marriages. I was the middle child, Caroline Caldwell, the peacemaker, the perfectionist, the one who desperately wanted to meet those unspoken expectations. My older sister Vivian rebelled early, moving to Seattle to start an ethical clothing brand. My younger sister Margot excelled effortlessly, a natural socialite who thrived in our mother's world. I was caught in the middle, eager to please but never quite measuring up. "Posture, Caroline," Mother would whisper at galas, adjusting my shoulders while smiling brilliantly at passing Connecticut aristocracy. "The Ashfords are watching." The Ashfords, old money, key investors in Daddy's fund, and parents to James, the golden boy who represented everything our family valued. I still remember my sweet 16, when Mother invited the entire Greenwich Country Day upper class. James was there with his then-girlfriend. Mother pulled me aside after I'd spent an hour talking to a scholarship student named Marco. "Darling, people notice who you give your time to," she said, steering me toward James and his friends. That night, I overheard her telling Daddy, "Caroline needs to aim higher. The De Laurentiis boy is lovely, but he won't open doors." Sarah came into my life during college at Vassar. She was everything I wasn't, bold, unapologetic, from a modest background in Buffalo. She taught me to order drinks without asking permission, to laugh loudly in public spaces, to imagine a life defined by my own choices. When I brought her home for Thanksgiving junior year, Mother took me aside. "She's certainly spirited," she said, her lips pursed in disapproval. I treasured that disapproval like a badge of honor. After graduation, Sarah and I moved to Portland, seeking distance from my family's expectations. I started a small but successful event planning business, specializing in sustainable weddings. Sarah worked as a photographer, often collaborating with me. We built our own chosen family of artists, entrepreneurs, and wanderers far from Connecticut's manicured lawns. Then came the Greenwich Hospital Charity Gala, 5 years after graduation. Mother was chairing the event and insisted I come home to help. "The Ashfords specifically asked if you'd be there," she mentioned casually. James had recently moved to Portland for work, and Mother had clearly sensed an opportunity. I brought Sarah as my buffer. James and I reconnected that night. He seemed different, interested in sustainability, impressed by my business, critical of the wealth display around us. For the first time, I felt my two worlds might be compatible. When he asked for my number, Sarah nudged me forward with an enthusiastic whisper. "This is your chance to show your mom you can play her game and win." Over the next year, James and I built what I thought was a perfect relationship. My mother was ecstatic. The Caldwell-Ashford union would cement our family's social standing. I'd finally earned her approval, the grand gesture of proving I could succeed on her terms while maintaining my independence. The secret? I'd decided after the wedding to use the Ashford connections to launch a foundation supporting first-generation college students, a quiet rebellion wrapped in social acceptability. Sarah was by my side through it all, my confidant, my maid of honor, the keeper of my secrets. Or so I thought. The Rosecliff Mansion in Newport, Rhode Island, that's where my perfect Connecticut wedding was supposed to unfold. Mother had pulled every string to secure the Gilded Age landmark on short notice when James proposed after just 11 months. The Vanderbilt connection will be divine in the Times announcement, she'd gushed. The night before the rehearsal dinner, our families gathered at the Castle Hill Inn. The Ashfords brought their trademark reserve, while Mother orchestrated conversation with practiced charm. James seemed distant, checking his phone repeatedly beneath the table. When I questioned him, he kissed my temple and murmured, "Just work, Care Bear." The pet name felt hollow somehow. "Caroline has the most exquisite taste," Mother announced over dessert. "She's transformed her little Portland business into something quite respectable." The backhanded compliment stung, but I smiled through it. "Actually," James interjected, "we've been discussing Caroline joining Ashford Investment as our sustainability director after the honeymoon." My fork froze midway to my mouth. This was news to me. "How perfect," Mother clapped her hands. "I always knew she'd come back to something suitable." Later that night, in our suite overlooking the Atlantic, I confronted him. "When exactly did we discuss me working for your family?" "Don't be difficult, Caroline," James sighed, loosening his Hermes tie. "Your little wedding business was fine for your rebellious phase, but we're building a life together now." "My business grossed 7 figures last year," I replied, my voice tight, "and Ashford clears that in a day." He softened, wrapping his arms around me. "This is what we both want, isn't it? Making our families proud while doing good in the world." I nodded against his chest. That familiar need to please, to perform, to perfect, finally shattered. Later that night, in our suite overlooking the Atlantic, I confronted him. "When exactly did we discuss me working for your family?" "Don't be difficult, Caroline," James sighed, loosening his Hermes tie. "Your little wedding business was fine for your rebellious phase, but we're building a life together now." "My business grossed 7 figures last year," I replied, my voice tight, "and Ashford clears that in a day." He softened, wrapping his arms around me. "This is what we both want, isn't it? Making our families proud while doing good in the world." I nodded against his chest, that familiar need to please overriding my discomfort. Later, I texted Sarah, "Something feels off. Can we talk before everything starts tomorrow?" Her reply came instantly. "Absolutely. Early morning beach walk?" But Sarah never showed at the beach. I walked alone, watching the waves crash against the rocky New England shore, trying to quiet the anxiety building in my chest. By the time I returned to the mansion, the wedding preparations were in full swing. The florist was transforming the marble hall with cascades of white peonies and blue hydrangeas. Mother was directing staff with military precision, while the Ashfords conversed with the officiant, a federal judge who'd gone to Harvard with James's father. "There you are," Mother's voice cut through the chaos. "Hair and makeup are waiting. And where's Sarah? The photographer needs the bridal party." "I haven't seen her," I admitted, checking my phone. No messages. Mother's smile tightened. "Well, find her. Everything must be perfect today." I tried calling Sarah repeatedly as the makeup artist applied my foundation. Straight to voicemail. A cold knot formed in my stomach. The photographer captured candid shots of me reading a handwritten letter from James, a letter Mother had suggested he write. At noon, 3 hours before the ceremony, Sarah finally texted, "In the coat check room. Need to talk now. Emergency." I slipped away from my cousin's watchful eyes, still in my silk robe, hair pinned in an elaborate updo. The wood-paneled corridor to the coat check felt miles long. When I pushed open the door, the room was empty. Then my phone buzzed. A video message from Sarah. The thumbnail showed a flash of skin, James's distinctive watch. I pressed play with trembling fingers. Sarah and James entwined in this room. Her bridesmaid dress pushed down to her waist, his formal shirt unbuttoned. "I've been sleeping with him for months," her text caption read. "He says he's only marrying you for your family connections. Says your mother practically arranged the whole thing. He laughs about how easy you are to manage." Another message followed. "He promised to leave you on the honeymoon. I'm sorry, Caroline. I thought you should know before it's too late." The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering on the hardwood floor. Through the window, I could see guests arriving, Mother greeting them with practiced charm, the Ashfords standing proudly near the entrance, my father checking his watch. In that moment, staring at my cracked phone screen still displaying the paused video, something inside me, that lifelong need to please, to perform, to perfect, finally shattered. I never returned to the bridal suite. Instead, I slipped out through the mansion's service entrance, still wearing my silk robe with my elaborate updo coming undone. I flagged down a departing catering van and offered the driver $500 in cash, my something blue emergency money, to take me to the Amtrak station in Providence. My phone exploded with notifications. "Mother, where are you? Everyone is waiting." James, "Babe, where did you go? Getting worried." Sarah, "I'm so sorry. Please talk to me." Even Vivian from Seattle, "Mom's having a meltdown. You okay?" I turned off my phone at the station, purchased a ticket to Portland, Maine, not Oregon, and disappeared into anonymity. I'd chosen a destination that would confuse them, buying time to actually vanish. Meanwhile, back at Rosecliff, the carefully orchestrated Caldwell-Ashford wedding was imploding in spectacular fashion. I learned what happened next from Vivian, the only family member I contacted weeks later. Mother had maintained composure for nearly an hour, telling guests there was a slight delay. James paced nervously, while Sarah was conspicuously absent. When the officiant suggested postponing, Mother refused. "Caroline is just being dramatic," she announced to the wedding party. "She'll be back momentarily." But as the clock struck 4, the ceremony's scheduled start, my father finally broke. Standing in the center of the rose-filled ballroom, surrounded by New England's elite, Charles Caldwell did something unprecedented. He defied my mother. "Elizabeth, enough," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Our daughter is gone. This wedding isn't happening." Mother's face had reportedly turned the exact shade of the pink peonies. She wouldn't dare humiliate us this way. That's when Margot, my perfect younger sister, stepped forward, my phone in her hand. I'd forgotten it in the coat check room. "I think you should see this," she said, playing the video for our parents and James's. What followed was described by Vivian as Connecticut's most restrained nuclear explosion. Mrs. Ashford gasped audibly. My father removed his glasses slowly, a gesture I recognized from childhood disappointments. Mother stood statue still, her social mask momentarily fractured. James lunged for the phone. "That's private," he hissed. "Like your relationship with the maid of honor?" Margot replied coldly. Mr. Ashford stepped forward. "James, explain yourself." "It's not what it looks like," James stammered, his prep school polish cracking. "Caroline has been difficult about family expectations. Sarah and I just connected over betraying my daughter?" My father's voice rarely raised, but Vivian said it boomed through the ballroom that day. Mother, ever strategic, had already shifted to damage control. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately," she suggested, ushering the immediate families toward the library. But the Greenwich Gossip Network operates at fiber optic speeds. Within minutes, whispers circulated among the guests. The bride had fled. The groom had been caught with the maid of honor. The prestigious Caldwell-Ashford union was collapsing before it began. In the library's privacy, according to Vivian, James attempted damage control. "I made a mistake, but I do care for Caroline. If she'll forgive me—" "There will be no forgiveness," my father interrupted. "There will be no wedding. My daughter deserves better than your family's connections and your betrayal." It was the first time in my life that my father had chosen me over social standing. Mother, however, was already calculating salvage strategies, perhaps after a suitable cooling period. "No," my father said simply. Then he turned to the assembled families. "This wedding is canceled. Please inform the guests they should return home." As the Ashfords left in disgrace, Mother reportedly turned to my father with cold fury. "Do you realize what you've done? The connections we've lost? The standing we've sacrificed?" My father looked at her for a long moment. "I realize," he said quietly, "that I've failed our daughter for 36 years by prioritizing the wrong things. I won't fail her again." Then he walked out, leaving my mother alone with the ruins of her social masterpiece. I spent 3 weeks in a cabin outside Portland, Maine, completely disconnected. When I finally turned on my phone, there were 347 missed calls, 529 texts, and 211 emails. I responded to only one, Vivian's simple message: "When you're ready, I'm here. No judgment." I flew to Seattle instead of returning to Connecticut or Oregon. Vivian welcomed me without questions, giving me space in her eco-friendly loft above her sustainable clothing store. Through her, I learned the aftermath of my non-wedding. James and Sarah had attempted damage control, claiming their affair had been brief and meaningless. Mother had suffered what she dramatically termed a social setback, but was already spinning narratives about my emotional fragility and how the family had narrowly avoided an unsuitable match. The real surprise was my father. He'd moved out of the Greenwich house into a small apartment and filed for separation from my mother after 38 years of marriage. He says he's been complicit in a value system that hurt his children, Vivian explained over homemade kombucha, "particularly you." 2 months after the wedding I finally called him. "I never wanted to disappoint you," I said, my voice breaking. "Caroline," he replied, his voice softer than I remembered. "I'm the one who's sorry. I let your mother dictate our family's values for decades. I watched her diminish your accomplishments because they didn't fit her blueprint. When you left that wedding, you showed more courage than I've had in my entire life." That conversation was the first thread in rebuilding a relationship with my father I'd never thought possible. He flew to Seattle monthly. We hiked Mount Rainier, discussed philosophy, and talked about his new volunteer work with first-generation college students, ironically similar to the foundation I'd secretly planned to create. Meanwhile, I reinvented myself. I legally changed my name to Caroline Foster, my maternal grandmother's maiden name, and relocated to Burlington, Vermont. The New England location let me occasionally see my father and Vivian while maintaining distance from my old life. I used my event planning experience to start a new business, Forest Mediation Services, helping divorcing couples navigate separations with dignity and minimal conflict. The irony wasn't lost on me. My expertise in planning perfect unions now served me in facilitating their respectful endings. I became known for my compassion and fairness, particularly in high-conflict divorces involving significant assets or public figures. 3 years into my new life, a familiar name appeared in my inbox, James Ashford. He'd found me through professional channels, unaware of who I really was. His message was brief: He and Sarah were divorcing after 2 years of marriage and needed a discreet mediator for their high-value separation. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then curiosity won. I agreed to take the case under my professional name, conducting preliminary work through associates. I learned they'd moved into what should have been my marital home in Portland, had a lavish wedding 6 months after mine was canceled, and quickly discovered their compatibility extended only to betrayal. Sarah had apparently cheated on James with his best friend. James had hidden assets in offshore accounts. They were now locked in a bitter dispute over the Portland house, my house, and a Nantucket vacation property purchased with a combination of his family money and her photography business profits, which had flourished after our wedding scandal made her briefly infamous. I scheduled the final mediation session at my Burlington office, planning to recuse myself at the last minute, citing a conflict of interest. But when I saw them through my office window, James still wearing his Patagonia vest over a button-down, Sarah with her signature oversized jewelry, something shifted inside me. I'd spent 6 years hiding, changing my name, building a new life. I'd let them steal my story, control the narrative. It was time to reclaim it. I entered the conference room, watching confusion cloud their faces. Recognition dawned slowly, their expressions morphing from professional politeness to shock. "Caroline?" James whispered, his face draining of color. "Actually, it's Mediator Foster now," I replied calmly, setting my portfolio on the table. "I understand you need help dividing assets acquired during your marriage." Sarah stood abruptly. "This is inappropriate. You can't be our mediator." "I'm the best in New England for high-conflict divorces," I said, my voice steady. "But you're right, there is a conflict of interest." I removed an envelope from my portfolio. "Before I recuse myself, I'd like to submit this as evidence of prior claims to the Portland property. It's an email I've prepared for whoever takes over your case." "You can't do this," James hissed, reaching for the envelope. I held it away. "Actually, I can. The house was purchased for our marriage. I have the original deed listing both our names before the transfer to you two. I never signed release documents because I never returned to sign anything." Their faces reflected the dawning realization that their carefully constructed life had been built on legally questionable foundations. "I've also taken the liberty of copying the relevant authorities on certain offshore transactions I discovered during my case review," I added, watching James pale further. "You're blackmailing us," Sarah whispered. "No, I'm reclaiming what was taken from me," I corrected her. "The Portland house reverts to me. The Nantucket property goes to a trust benefiting first-generation college students from Vermont. In exchange, I don't pursue further legal action or publicly connect myself to your scandal." The mediator who replaced me, a colleague who'd been thoroughly briefed, reported they signed the agreement within hours. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. Apparently, news of my professional encounter with James and Sarah had reached Greenwich. "While I don't approve of your methods," she wrote, "I admire your strategic thinking. Perhaps you are a Caldwell after all." I framed it, not as validation, but as a reminder of how far I'd come from seeking her approval. The Portland house became a retreat center for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. The Caldwell Foster First Generation Scholarship, jointly funded by my father and me, has helped 27 students attend college. Vivian and I speak weekly, and Margot has cautiously begun building a relationship with me, independent of our mother. And that foundation I'd secretly planned to create with the Ashford connections, I built it anyway, without their name or influence, proving that my dreams had never required their approval at all. Looking back now, standing in my Burlington office with the Green Mountains visible through the window, I realized that wedding day wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning. Sometimes the most painful betrayals lead us to our truest paths. I built a life on my own terms, reclaimed my power, and found family in unexpected places. The email that Sarah and James received during their divorce wasn't just about property or revenge, it was about reclaiming my narrative, refusing to be the runaway bride in someone else's story. If you've ever been betrayed or felt forced to disappear from your own life, know this: you can rewrite the ending. Your story isn't over. It's simply taking an unexpected turn towards something authentic. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and reinvention. Share in the comments about a time when a betrayal ultimately led you somewhere better. Your experiences might help someone else find their way forward. Thanks for listening to my journey.